An air traffic controller's primary responsibility isn't just the separation of aircraft. Issuing safety alerts is the second part of the duty priority that's mandated by the 7110.65. But what exactly is a safety alert? Why do they need to be issued, and when? My name is Kyle Warner. I'm an air traffic control student here at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. We're going to answer these questions about safety alerts and look at some examples in the radar lab today on ATCast.
Thank you. JetBlue 1264 Boston Ground, taxi ramp via November and Alpha. Boston Tower, Gulfstream 717, I confirm to on the ILS 4 right approach. Yes, there's 741's checking out. 741 Boston Tower, good evening, thanks for calling 737 distance time no. I'm like pulling clear land, tax by 1015. 417, thanks for the service, terminates clock VFR for change, service signal way back. Air 117, okay, good night now.
Dan Lindsay joins me today from the radar lab. Dan?
Thanks, Kyle. Let's get right to it. First of all, by looking at what traffic alerts are and how they function. Like Kyle mentioned, the 7110.65 mandates the issuance of safety alerts as part of an air traffic controller's duty priority. Chapter 2, Section 1, Paragraph 2A states, give first priority to separating aircraft and issuing safety alerts as required in this order. So, when are safety alerts required? In Chapter 2, Section 1, Paragraph 6, the .65 goes on to say, issue a safety alert to an aircraft if you are aware that the aircraft is in a position or altitude which, in your judgment, places it in unsafe proximity to terrain, obstructions, or other aircraft. Note that the phrasing of the .65 says, in your judgment. A controller's primary job is safety, and factors such as weather, pilot ability, and aircraft performance capabilities may require the issuance of a safety alert, even though altitude or separation minimums have not yet been broken. The 7110 also says, once the pilot informs you action is being taken to resolve the situation, you may discontinue the issuance of further alerts. Once you have made the pilot aware of the situation and he or she responds that appropriate action is being taken, let them deal with the situation and provide further assistance if requested. Finally, the .65 says, do not assume that because someone else has responsibility for the aircraft, that the unsafe situation has been observed and the safety alert issued. Inform the appropriate controller. Basically, the .65 mandates that you respond to any unsafe situation that you observe, even if it's in another controller's sector or area of responsibility. If you see such a situation, contact the appropriate controller to make sure that action is being taken. Once again, safety is your #1 priority, and as part of a team, it's your job to watch out for your fellow controllers. What happens once a safety alert is issued? In note number 3, the 7110 states, once the alert is issued, it is solely the pilot's prerogative to determine what course of action, if any, will be taken. You cannot instruct the pilot to do anything, but you can suggest a course of action and provide him or her with all available information regarding traffic, terrain, weather, and other pertinent information about the situation. It's important to note that it doesn't matter whose fault a particular situation is. The controller is still responsible for issuing a safety alert, regardless of whether it's a pilot deviation or an operational error. There are two kinds of safety alerts: terrain and obstruction alerts, also called low altitude alerts, and aircraft conflict or Mode C intruder alerts, also called traffic alerts. A terrain obstruction alert is issued when an aircraft is in unsafe proximity to terrain or other obstacles such as buildings or antennas. Normally, if an aircraft is IFR, a terrain obstruction alert will automatically be triggered when it descends below the minimum vectoring altitude, or MVA, for the area in which it is flying. The radar target's data block will turn red, and LA, for low altitude, will appear above the call sign. In case you're wondering, the radar system filters out certain altitudes, such as those along instrument approaches, so that terrain obstruction alerts are not constantly triggered for aircraft that are landing or departing. So what is an MVA? It stands for minimum vectoring altitude, which is the lowest altitude at which a controller may vector an IFR aircraft unless an emergency exists. The MVA is at least 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle in a given area. An aircraft conflict Mode C intruder alert is issued when 2 or more IFR aircraft break minimum radar or altitude separation. In Academy Approaches airspace, this is 3 miles laterally for aircraft at the same altitude, or 1,000 feet vertically. Normally, in the case of IFR aircraft, the alert is triggered automatically. The targets will turn red on the radar scope, and CA for a conflict alert will appear above the call signs of the aircraft. Issuance of safety alerts is your first priority whenever altitude or separation minimums are broken, or when you as the controller judge that aircraft are in unsafe proximity to aircraft or other obstacles. Keep in mind too that if you see that you are about to lose separation, you can issue the alert right away. Don't just wait until the targets turn red. Issue the alert as soon as you see the problem, and give the pilots as much time as possible to take action. One final thing you should know is that the requirement for wake turbulence separation may increase the radar separation minimums from 3 miles, depending on the types of aircraft involved. See episode 2 of ATCast for more about wake turbulence separation. Coming up next, we'll look at some examples of what safety alerts look like in the radar lab, and the phraseology needed to issue them. When must safety alerts be issued? A. Whenever an aircraft is observed in unsafe proximity to other aircraft and obstructions. B. Whenever minimum separation is lost. C. Whenever you judge minimum separation may be lost. Or D. All of the above. The answer is D. All of the above. Once a safety alert is issued, whose prerogative is it to decide what action will be taken? A. The controller, B. The pilot, C. The aircraft operator, or D. The FAA facility manager. The answer is B. The pilot will decide what action, if any, will be taken after a safety alert is issued. Let's take a look at what low altitude and traffic alerts look like on a radar display, and hear the correct phraseology for issuing them. When an aircraft descends below the MVA, a terrain obstruction alert is automatically triggered. This map shows the MVAs in different parts of Academy Approach's airspace. Note that outside Academy's airspace, the MVA is 4,000. As you can see, 3,000 is the highest MVA throughout Academy's airspace. There are some lower MVAs, but 3,000 works everywhere. Let's see what a terrain obstruction alert looks like. In this case, an aircraft at 2,100 is entering part of the airspace where the MVA is 3,000. In this example, the aircraft is at 3,000, but the controller has forgotten to turn it off the downwind leg to Academy Airport. The MVA in Aerocenter's airspace is 4,000. So, as soon as the aircraft leaves Academy Approach's airspace boundary of 35 nautical miles around Academy Airport, a terrain obstruction alert will be triggered. Here's the phraseology for issuing a terrain obstruction alert. Low altitude alert, followed by the aircraft call sign. Check your altitude immediately. The MVA in your area is, followed by the appropriate altitude. You can suggest that the pilot climb to whatever the MVA is, but it is not required by the 7110. If you do so, you must say, advise you climb and maintain whatever the MVA is. Remember that you cannot instruct the pilot to climb, because like we said before, it is up to the pilot to determine the best course of action. But you can and should provide as much assistance as possible. Notice that unlike other radio transmissions, you do not begin this one with the aircraft's call sign. Instead, you begin with the phrase low altitude alert in order to grab the attention of every pilot on your frequency and to emphasize that a critical safety situation exists. The instruction to check your altitude is followed by the word immediately to alert the pilot that he or she is in imminent danger. Let's look at our previous 2 examples again, this time with the phraseology included.
Low altitude alert, November 818908, check your altitude immediately. The MVA in your area is 3,000.
Roger, climbing to 3,000, November 818908.
Low altitude alert, American 131, check your altitude immediately. The MVA in your area is 4,000.
Climbing to 4,000, American 131.
Now let's look at conflict alerts. Once again, aircraft conflict alerts are automatically triggered in most situations when IFR aircraft break separation minimums. Within Academy Approach's airspace, the minimums are 3 miles of lateral separation at the same altitude or 1,000 feet of vertical separation. Let's take a look at what this looks like on your radar display. In our first example, these aircraft are at the same altitude on a downwind for Academy Airport. The trailing aircraft is faster than the leading aircraft and is overtaking it. Once the 3-mile separation minimum is broken, a conflict alert is triggered on the display. In the next example, one aircraft is climbing out from Academy Airport and is passing through the flight path of an aircraft on downwind. An alert is triggered when the first aircraft breaks the vertical separation minimum of 1,000 feet. Here's the phraseology for issuing an aircraft conflict Mode C intruder alert. Traffic alert, followed by the aircraft call sign and the position of the conflicting traffic given as a clock position. Advise you turn left or right and/or climb or descend immediately. This alert must be issued to all aircraft involved. When issuing an instruction to multiple aircraft in one transmission, say break in between instructions. Don't wait for a readback in this kind of situation. This information is vital to the safety of each aircraft involved, so get it out there quickly and in a single transmission. Just like the terrain obstruction alert, the transmission begins with the phrase traffic alert instead of the aircraft call sign to grab the attention of everyone on frequency. The 7110 says you should suggest a course of action, such as a turn or change in altitude, but once again, you cannot instruct anyone to do anything. It is up to the pilots to decide the best course of action. The word immediately tells the pilots involved that they are in imminent danger. Incidentally, the word immediately always signifies imminent danger and should never be used unless an imminent situation exists. Let's return to our aircraft conflict alert examples and include the phraseology you would use in those situations.
Traffic alert. American 536 Heavy, 12 o'clock, 3 miles. Advise you turn right immediately. Break. Delta 880, 6 o'clock, less than 3 miles. Advise you turn left immediately.
Turning left, Delta 880.
Turning right, American 536 Heavy. Traffic alert, Northwest 1234 Heavy, 11 o'clock, 2 miles. Advise you descend immediately. Break. November 425 Lima Gulf, 2 o'clock, less than 2 miles. Advise you climb immediately.
Descending Northwest 1234 Heavy.
Climbing November 425 Lima Gulf.
Coming up next, we'll review what we covered in this episode. What are the separation minimums within Academy Approach's airspace? A. 500 feet vertical, 1 mile lateral. B. 500 feet vertical, 2 miles lateral. C. 1,000 feet vertical, 3 miles lateral. Or D. 1,000 feet vertical, 5 miles lateral. The answer is C. IFR aircraft must be separated by 1,000 feet vertically or 3 miles laterally. According to the 7110.65, the word immediately signifies that what type of situation exists. A hazardous situation. B, a critical situation. C, a warning situation. D, an imminent situation. The answer is D, an imminent situation. Now for a quick review of what we went over in this episode. There are 2 kinds of safety alerts mandated by the 7110.65. Terrain obstruction alerts and aircraft conflict or Mode C intruder alerts. A terrain obstruction alert is triggered whenever an aircraft descends below the minimum vectoring altitude within a particular radar sector. At Academy, there are several different MVAs in different parts of the airspace as depicted on this map. 3,000 is the highest MVA throughout the airspace. The phraseology for a terrain obstruction alert is low altitude alert followed by the aircraft call sign, check your altitude immediately, the MVA in your area is, and then the appropriate altitude. An aircraft conflict Mode C intruder alert is triggered whenever aircraft break minimum separation. Within Academy Approach's airspace, the minimums are 3 miles for aircraft at the same altitude or 1,000 feet vertically. The phraseology for issuing this alert is traffic alert, followed by the aircraft call sign and the position of the conflicting traffic given as a clock position. Advise you turn left or right and/or climb or descend immediately. The 7110.65 mandates the issuance of safety alerts in Chapter 2, Section 1, Paragraph 2A. When an alert is issued, it is up to the pilot to decide what to do about it. Controllers can suggest a course of action, but they cannot issue any instructions. Finally, don't wait until targets turn red to issue an alert. If you see that two aircraft are going to get too close, issue the alert right away and give the pilots as much time as possible to decide what to do. That's it from the Radar Lab. Back to you, Kyle.
Thanks, Dan. On behalf of UND Air Traffic Control, the Student Air Traffic Controller Association, and the Aerospace Network, thank you for watching. My name is Kyle Warner, frequency change approved.
Learn more about UND Air Traffic Control and watch more episodes of ATCast by logging on to www.undsatka.org. Students may interactively test their knowledge by taking the ATCast quizzes on SATCA's Easy LMS page. ATCast can also be downloaded for free to your portable media device. Just search for ATCast on iTunes U.